To the maker of the motion with the amended language, is the motion with regard to the police chief notifying the probation officer considered a change to the ordinance as proposed, or just an additional recommendation, and then through the chair to the department, is that something that can be implemented?
It's just an additional change.
Not for clarification, not to the language of the ordinance, but just to the motion.
Yes, it's just a recommendation. It's not changing the ordinance.
And a follow-up to the chief of police, if he could speak to that, please.
Chief?
There will be no problem incorporating notification to a probation or parole officer as part of our standard operating procedure.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just may follow up. I know that was one of the concerns because cities are so limited with regard to meting out penalties, as Councilman Saraceno has explained. However, in addition to that, there was I think a technical language problem that was pointed out in the Committee of the Whole, specifically in the enforcement provision, Section 3, that the language reads that the individual would have to go to the same child safety zone a second time to be in violation of this ordinance, and that I'd probably hold this amendment until the amendment that's on the floor is voted on, or is the amendment on the floor considered part of the main motion, Your Honor?
The amendment proposed by Councilman Saraceno related to the increase in fines was considered a friendly amendment, was adopted as such by Councilman Teicholz, so we're on the main motion.
Okay. So as an amendment to the main motion, in Section 3 enforcement procedures, remove the text "the same" and insert either "a" or "any" as recommended by Corporation Counsel, whether "a" or "any" would make more sense.
The motion's been made to amend the ordinance to change the language related to Section 3, and that was seconded by Councilman Chianese. Discussion related to the amendment.
And if I may follow up, my reason for proposing the amendment, Your Honor.
Hold on 1 second. Mr. Calvo, I'll call you. How do you go before?
Thank you, Your Honor. The reason for this is a technical glitch, I think that was pointed out by Corporation Counsel in the Committee of the Whole, that the current language would allow an individual to simply zone hop, because the language says the same child safety zone as opposed to any child safety zone. And because there are several of them, or many of them within the community, that we wouldn't want someone just simply dodging a fine by hopping from one to the other. And so that would just clarify it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Calvo.
May I ask a question to Mr. Casagrande?
Please proceed. Mr. Casagrande.
Casagrande, Mr. Sadi's proposed amendment, would that be a substantive change to this ordinance that would require it to return back to committee and back to public hearing?
In my opinion, that change would increase the reach of the ordinance, and in that sense, therefore, would go beyond procedural. Therefore, I think the council could do one of two things. You could simply adopt the ordinance as proposed tonight, and then have the amendment come back at a later date to go through another public hearing or committee, or you could refer it back. My opinion is that it's a substantive change.
Thank you.
To you, Mr. Chair, have we enumerated the child safety zones? I believe you said there were 40 to 45.
Yes, we have.
And through you to Mr. Casagrande, without the change the amendment proposed by Mr. Sadi, it remains that a sex offender who is in a child safety zone will be warned and asked to leave, but he may go to 43 other child safety zones without a violation. Is that correct?
Predicated solely on the warning that he received in the first child safety zone. If he or she goes to another child safety zone and then receives a written warning at that zone, then he or she comes back to that zone, he will then be subject to the citation procedure. But yes, the way it is written now, the ability of the police officer to give the citation depends on the police officer encountering that person first in the specific child safety zone where you should go, and then in the same child safety zone.
And through the chair, just a technical question. Is the violation payable like a traffic ticket through the mail?
I believe so. It's subject to the same procedures as placed in the citation hearing ordinance, which is part of what you're adopting tonight, should you choose to adopt, is amending the citation hearing ordinance to add a violation of this sex offender ordinance to the list of ordinances or offenses that police officers can issue tickets for citation. So it's subject to the same provisions for paying the fine or appealing the fine to the citation hearing ordinance.
And through the chair, are those provisions that the fine may be mailed in?
I believe so, but I don't have the citation ordinance in front of me, so I can't hold it. I don't know.
Thank you.
Further discussion related to the amendment. Go ahead, Mr. Visconti.
I understand exactly where Mr. Sadi is going with his amendment. I'm concerned that the delay to this ordinance being enacted only could stand to put our children at danger for a greater period of time than what we can enact right now. I think that according to Mr. Casagrande, that the amendment is easily added later on. I'd like to see us add that amendment at a later date. I'd like to see us get the ordinance enacted tonight, get that passed, and move on. Not every ordinance that we've created has been perfect, nor will any ordinance that we create in the future be perfect. We do get amended from time to time, and that's our job here. So I would just encourage my fellow colleagues to enact the ordinance. Let's enact the ordinance the way it stands, and we can add and make changes. I'm sure that we'll come up with many things in the future that will need to be corrected, not only in this ordinance, but in several other ordinances that we'll pass. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment.
Mr. Johnson, you move the question.
Then what is your second to move the question on the amendment? Seconded by Councilman Basso. Motion to move the question requires a simple majority, and there is no debated. There is discussion now. No debated discussion moving the question. All those in favor of moving the question on the amendment only, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed to moving the question on the amendment, signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Show of hands on that, folks. Okay, and the negative will be Councilman Perkins, Councilman Visconti, Councilman Chinisi, Councilman Esposito, Councilman Sadi, Councilman Rotella, Councilwoman Saraceno, and Councilwoman Patterson. Okay, now we're back to the voting on the amendment itself. Mr. Casagrande, Mr. Riley. Actually, we can't have any discussion right now on the amendment. We're just on the amendment now. Okay, so we're going to move on the amendment. And Mr. Casagrande's ruled that the amendment would be a substantial change to the ordinance that presented. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay.
Nay.
In the nays, and let's start with a roll call so we make sure. So, okay, let me just restate the amendment, just so everybody knows what we're doing. A negative vote means the amendment fails, and we go back to voting on the main motion. A yes vote means that you have voted to put the amendment in place. So, can we go with a roll call just to make it easier so we can count votes? Please call.
McMahon. No. Negershed.
No.
Johnson.
No.
Trombetta.
No.
Calendrino.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Visconti.
Yes.
Chinese.
Yes.
Esposito.
Yes.
Sadi.
Yes.
Cabo.
No.
Basso.
No.
Botello.
Yes.
Dees. Teicholz.
No.
Consumptus.
No.
Riley.
No.
Saraceno.
Yes.
Seabury.
No.
Tabersack.
Yes.
8 yes. 11 no.
And again, I'm kind of disappointed at our council this evening, because we have once again have the opportunity to make an ordinance that is going to be a landmark legislation within the state of Connecticut, that we're not making this a better ordinance. I mean, I have to talk about Councilman Cabo, who once again said this ordinance is not perfect. There are gaps. We had an amendment on the floor to make this a better ordinance. And what did this council do? It rejected it, saying we can always correct it later. Our job as council is to make an ordinance that is as perfect as we can get, not say, well, we'll fix it later. And I think we have that opportunity, and we owe it to the public to make these ordinances that are enforceable and they do protect our children. Otherwise, we're going to create an ordinance that is going to have a false sense of safety to the public, that they think that their children will be safer because this ordinance is in place, when in fact they might not be. And I think we have that opportunity to do it, and once again we fail to do that. I applaud, Corporation Council and the committee for putting down the basis, and they constantly ask for our help to make this a better ordinance, and we didn't do it. And I'm very upset about that. So I think hopefully, before this night's over, that we take the time and make this a better ordinance. There's no rush here. I mean, there's no fire that this has to be done this evening. There's still time to make this a better ordinance. I think we owe it to do that. And so I just want to get those points across.
I wasn't able to attend the November 28th meeting. I agree with a lot of things Councilman Ashinzi just said regarding how the process is being expedited just to get the ordinance through for the sake of getting the ordinance through. Looking at the meeting minutes from the 28th, what occurred was, during discussion, the question was moved. And what that means is it's kind of like sticking your fingers in your ears because you don't want to hear anything else. Council persons present weren't allowed to ask additional questions, and it was cut off. Okay? And a lot of those things that they were going to discuss are the things we're discussing now. And it troubles me to be in another situation today where the question was moved again, and the amendment was just taken off the floor by Councilman Johnson. All right, it's the same exact situation. We go from a subcommittee meeting and we get a question moved. We come to the county council chambers and we get a question moved. Again, the good ordinance was just on the floor where we could have made this ordinance a little bit better. And now we can't. We're talking convicted felons here, people who need to have something hung over their head in terms of a consequence. And without being reported to the parole or probation officers, that whole consequence is gone. Not only that, you can dance this around the whole area by going from one place to the next without pretty much any recourse. So I think we're doing our citizens a disservice by not having that First Amendment go through, making this thing more substantial. A young man spoke earlier and said, to make our best attempt, this isn't my best attempt. And I hope it isn't the other council people's either. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Mr. Perkins. Let me just say that the council ignores the fact that this ordinance was drafted over 60 days, and if council waits till the night of the meeting to come in with a suggestion or an idea, it clearly is indicative that the feeling of the council isn't as powerful as what you're articulating here tonight. Any member of this council could have called 2 weeks ago and said, hey, I think we can make this better, even if the motion was made to move the question. And it seems to me that what we're seeing more are delaying tactics than they are really related to about making an ordinance better. At the end of the day, we're going to revisit this time and time again. The chief is going to implement this. He's going to come back with recommendations. His suggestions will be duly implemented. We've asked the legislature to increase the fine. The We've asked the chief to develop an SOP to inform the probation officer, parole officer, if somebody's caught in there. I think, folks, that's a pretty serious deterrent. I don't think somebody is going to hop from site to site after being approached by an officer, written out, his parole officer then gets called. I don't think the next step is going to be, let's jump in the car and go over to Rogers Park because I just got warned at Candlewood Lake. I think that really kind of begs the question, and it really seems to send a message that folks are looking for reasons not to vote for this tonight. At the end of the day, you may philosophically disagree with this, and that's certainly your prerogative, and I encourage you to vote no if that's your vote. But let's not sort of devolve this discussion into, again, punching holes in little pieces of the legislation just because it's not perfect. I've yet to see a bill that is perfect. We'll keep working on it, we'll revisit it, we'll amend it, and we'll work on making sure that at the end of the day it will be a good piece of legislation. Mr. Sally, you're asking about.
Thank you, Your Honor. I disagree that the comments with regard to the concerns over the ordinance are a delaying tactic, in as much as most of the people who have brought up these comments did vote in favor in the committee of the whole to move this ordinance on to this meeting tonight. With regard to the amendment, yes, disappointed that it did not pass. It was an issue that came up in the committee of the whole that I don't think people had realized prior to that. Oftentimes when there's a fairly lengthy ordinance, there may be a word or two, and a word or two doesn't seem like a lot, but in drafting legislation, an and or an or a must or a shall can make a world of difference.